Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coach's Corner University podcast. I'm your host, Paul O'Need, and today I am joined by another one of Austin's people. Had the pleasure of speaking with Matt Berzicott, and now we have the pleasure of speaking with Trey Bruffey. So Trey, welcome to the podcast.
What's up, buddy? Well, first, thanks for saying my last name right. Most of the time, everybody says Bruffey. It's always butchered.
I mean, Bruffey is quite sophisticated.
When I wrestled, man, and they would announce me to come to the mat, it was always Trey Bruffey. I would crack up. So I appreciate
it comes off the tongue really nicely.
Right. But yeah, dude, the amount of podcasts I've done and people I talk to, they always butcher my name, or they put the R at the beginning is silent and they put an indivisible R at the end and call it buffery. I'm like, can you not fucking read? So I appreciate
one thing I can do, it's read. So
I know my wife is probably hearing this and cracking up because now that we're married, she gets the same shit. So
my wife gets it too. My name gets butchered. It's like Oneid, Wanted. I'm like, no, it's just Oneed.
Yeah.
And when Liv won her pro card, Olivia Oneid, I was like, ugh. Well, I couldn't even think about it at the time because I dropped my phone. I juggled my phone. Austin dropped his phone.
Yeah.
So we couldn't get a video of it anyway. So,
no, man, I appreciate you having me on.
So you're the owner of Be Opposite Training, which I'd love to know where'd that come from. It's a bit out there.
So I run Be Opposite Training Nutrition. I do that more locally now, and then obviously work with Austin Stout at Integrated Muscle and Health. The online portion of that, I kind of didn't dissolve it, but I immersed myself into IMH. The Be Opposite thing, I know you know who Chris Edmonds is, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, me and Chris are from the same hometown. That was my training partner and mentor from 16 years old till I was 23.
So are you batshit crazy too?
Used to be, not like that, but
man, he is the most intense person I've ever spoken to.
Yeah, so that's where it came from. And it came from, and we'll just go on the whole backstory. I went to the Golds that he was like the fitness manager and personal training manager of, and my dad had a bunch of personal training sessions he wasn't using. I was going to go up, and the guy's like, "Well, your son comes here. Like, why don't you let him work with Chris?" And at that time, I'm wrestling. I'm trying to get a wrestling scholarship, and I connected with Chris at like 16 or 17, and he obviously helped me with wrestling, with strength training. I would go see him at 5 a.m. before school, then drive an hour the other way to school. Then I'd have a workout there, wrestling, and then whatever else. And I remember when I met him, super intense guy. I'm a naive 16-year-old. I'm like, well, I'll eat shit if you tell me to eat it.
Oh yeah,
because I was just state championship. I had my goals for wrestling. I knew I had lost all this weight on my own. I had been training on my own, but training as a bodybuilding. I was like, I just need someone to guide it. And I remember the first workout I ever did with him. It was just, and if you were to talk to him today, I haven't talked to him in a very long time since I got away from bodybuilding. But there was this tricep he had me do. It was 30 incline barbell presses into 30 bent over rows into 30 side laterals. Dude, after the second round, I was throwing up everywhere. I was like, God, I am a bitch right now. And I couldn't even finish the workout. And he's like, hey, let's just stop. I was like, well, and it was summertime. I had to go work for my dad. I was like, are you going to be here tonight? And he's like, well, yeah, I'm here till 8. I'll be back here at 6:30. Can you just leave this out and tell me what to do? And I'll come back and do it. And right away, he's like, this kid's different. He's just going to do where the fuck I do. And if he will just come back and make sure it's done. And once I decided not to wrestle anymore, I got into bodybuilding. That's who helped me with bodybuilding for a while until I connected with Austin. And I remember we went up from 138 to a sloppy 210. I was 18 years old, and I'm a freshman in college, and 210 fat as shit, dude. Just a doughboy. But at that time, we were just put on as much muscle and as weight as possible. And we just started dieting. And everybody's asked, oh, what are you prepping for? I'm like, I'm just suffering for the hell of it. What do you mean? I want to be great. I'm very aware of where I'm at. And I know I just got to do whatever it takes. And what Chris ingrained in my head was just be opposite of everyone else. People don't want to diet, be opposite of them. People want to skip their workouts because of whatever else, be opposite of them. Others don't want to choose a different show because they're all caught up in their feelings, be opposite of them. And that was something that stuck with me. And so when I I started coaching people when I was 17 and was helping wrestlers. So it's going on almost 13 years now. I just like, well, be opposite. It makes sense. That's how I try to teach everyone is to be opposite of whatever your goals are, just be opposite of what the normal person would do. So that's where it kind of came from. And that first prep we ended up finding was a Natural, Ohio in 2015. And it was a 36-week prep. And I remember for like 16 weeks is like an hour of cardio. And then towards the end, it was protein veggie every meal for 6 weeks and 2 hours of cardio. And then I still had to walk campus for school and everything. I think we ended up going from 210 to like 148. And it was just crazy. And so that's kind of how it came about, is just the Be Opposite came up with that. And it's always just stuck because there couldn't be anything more truer when it comes to whether it's political views or anything. We have these extremists with everything, but they're toxic extremists. So with my coaching and just my philosophy of life is just, well, be opposite than all the shitty people or all the people that think you have to do this. Is just be open-minded to do things outside the norm, which with my coaching tends to be outside the norm. So that's kind of how it came about.
I love that. I think anytime you can align your personal values with business, especially when it comes to serving other people, it's always a recipe for success. And I mean, being opposite to what we see as the norm these days, that's pretty good fucking advice. Like let's be serious. So, you mentioned did you compete actively in bodybuilding for a while, and you mentioned you moved away from it. So you're not competing anymore?
Not anymore. So I did the Natural, Ohio, and then jumped on my first like cycle at 20. Looking back, I wish I never would have went that route, but I had goals. I gave myself, I said, if I don't turn pro by 25, I'm not doing it. And if you were to look at my yearbook today from senior year, that is literally what I said. And that was a promise. So I ended up doing that show, worked with Chris for a period of time. And then I was coaching and helping a gal that had endometriosis. And I had no clue what the hell I was doing. I was 21 years old, which nowadays that's just now being talked about. So that if that tells you anything, that's 9 years ago almost of me already getting to the functional realm. And I had followed Austin all the way back to the days like RX Muscle when he had his data's for whatever forum thread. And I was friends with him on Facebook, and I see this guy talking. I was like, shit, I'm just gonna message him. I said, hey man, like, I had this client. I don't really know what I'm doing, and it just seems like you do. And right away we connected, and he was running a seminar. And so I drove all the way from Virginia to his house to do the seminar. He let me stay there. And it was kind of like lost best friends just find each other. And I mean, man, I was 21. He was living, like doing what my ultimate dream was of coaching and training. And so I jumped on board. I've been mentoring with Austin since 2016 now and worked with him. I ended up getting like a really bad car accident, maybe about a year or so later. Had to be resuscitated at the scene.
Holy shit.
Developed a really bad like drug addiction. I also had a lot of poor influences of what Austin was trying to prevent. It's kind of what me and Austin and a lot of us are trying to do, and show the safer use of bodybuilding and show the importance of the health and gut health and stuff. I got associated with the wrong parties, and at the end of the day, it was my decision, but I felt the missing part was drugs. And I developed a really bad addiction to Xanax and Ambien, but also to PEDs. At the same time, I was struggling with like suicide tendencies. And I ended up not being able to train for a while, and was finally able to train. I ended up doing like an 8-week prep and did a Texas show. I weighed in at like 198, but in the morning of, I was 176. I was like, shit, I'm gonna get my ass kicked. And like,
holy fuck, you just take too much Diazide.
Nah, dude, I won't say coach I was working with, but we just crumbled it and picked a little piece of it, and I took it. But my meal plan was 14 ounces of chicken 7 times a day, and all that volume, you're gonna hold all that weight. So I would always float a lot. And what we were after was just the best look, not the weight, in terms of like a weight class. And I did well. I think I got like 3rd out of 10th or whatever, which isn't bad giving up that much weight. And I was 23 years old too. And took a long off season, did one more show with Chris on that one. It was the Arnold Amateur. But 6 weeks out, I got a really bad infection. I also got early stage liver failure. Ended up having jaundice, I was doing a lot of things that he wasn't aware of. There's a lot of stuff that we were misaligned on. And I mean, 24 years old, 25, again, it's a different game. So after that show, it's when the virus hit the world. So I was in 2020, bombed the show. I had already had jaundice. I was technically a type 2 diabetic at the time. Like my insulin levels were 50.
Oh, okay.
Fasted
Cool.
blood glucose was over 300. Stupid stuff. And like I said at the beginning of this, I told myself if I don't turn pro at 25, I will not do this anymore. I saw my life was in shambles. I had so much debt. I was such a terrible person, stealing money from my dad. I was drug dealing at the time. I was a terrible partner to my now wife. And I just, when I stepped off that stage, I just said, I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. And so I stepped completely aside from bodybuilding. And honestly, I stopped training the last 4 years. I didn't get back into training until a few weeks ago. And that's because now I have Austin to go train with him. So that's kind of my story. It was just a lot of like bad things. I had a lot of life lessons to learn in my early 20s that now at 29, almost 30, I can reflect back and be like, okay, that's where I steered wrong. This is what I probably could do different, which is what, when I coach, it's good. I'm very grateful it happened because now I can prevent all these other people doing the stupid things that we all thought we had to do with drugs or bodybuilding or powerlifting or whatever has to be your life. No, it's supposed to be part of your life. Because I've done the part of this is your life and you don't do anything. And I've lost so many people in my life. And I try to right my wrongs so much on a daily basis. So that's why I don't compete anymore. I would love to maybe do one more show on TRT, but I want to be a dad. I want to keep growing the business. I want to keep thriving with my wife who helps me with the business. That is a priority that I never wanted to have, like rocking chair syndrome. I'm 65 years old. I'm sitting there rocking with my wife and I've got my grandkids running around. I don't want to be like, why did I waste all my time on something like that? That's not going to amount to anything for me in the grand scheme of things. I'm not going to win money as a pro. I'm not going to, as a half-ass bodybuilder. So that's where I'm at now, just coaching, trying to help people in the other ways.
Man, there's a lot to tease out of that. First of all, thank you for your honesty. Like I think sharing honestly, like being open about a story is really valuable because even for myself, there's a lot of the same, behaviors. I remember, we mentioned Matt earlier. Matt saying like, "Oh, I identify with bodybuilding," and then all of a sudden he completely changes his trajectory. For myself, I remember it was the 2015 Arnold. No, 2016 Arnold, where I competed and I went like 5 for 9. I had done everything in my power, underscored, done more things than I have in the past. And I went 5 for 9. I walked off the platform and I was like, this isn't fun anymore. And it was at that point I realized that like my identity could not be wrapped up in this sport. It had to be something else. And it really started, that was like the start of the process of me looking in the mirror a lot more. But I really think that as coaches, we're not supposed to be perfect. Like we're not supposed to be this like perfect person. And our experiences always serve us. Number one, because it gives us empathy. So when you get that client who says, I'll do anything it takes, you can remind them, hey, anything means your life. Are you willing to give your life for this? And if the answer is yes, I don't want to work with that client because that's against my ethics, right? And I think, yeah, you're nodding your head, feel the same way. So, when we have that empathy, when we can share our own experiences, our own missteps, it just allows us to be better for our people. It also helps us helps us to let them avoid those mistakes. That was a really convoluted way of saying it. When you are, going through, like, I couldn't imagine stepping away from training for 4 years though. Like that's a lot. Was it, if you were training, you kind of felt that pull back, or like what was that?
When I say like heavy addicted to steroids and PEDs, we're talking like Boston type stuff.
Sick.
And Boston was a Quayton type person. Like a lot of people can poo-poo on what he did for the industry and whatever else.
Of course.
As a human being, when we talked personally, he was always very kind to me, and I was able to reflect a lot with that before he passed. And when I say crazy, my point with those steroids and with competing is I told myself and my wife or anyone that used to work with me at the hospital, they attest. I always told people I will die at 25. I will not be here because I felt there was nothing in life that was important to me. Bodybuilding was it, and I was either going to turn pro or I will make sure I die trying. So with that last prep, it wasn't just to perform and be where I wanted to be, but I was literally trying to indirectly kill myself without my now wife knowing it at the time. So I would always use the most painful stuff so I could feel that pain because I used to struggle with like cutting myself.
Mm.
And so how can I hide that? Cool. I'm going to load up on synthol. I'm going to load up on, is it AMP? Is that the one that makes you hyperventilate?
I don't know.
It's Synthetech. It's a Dino. Helps with the pump. It's Synthetine, I think, from Synthetech. If you look on Professional Muscle, I don't even know what it is.
Okay. Yeah, I've
But
never heard of it.
it's basically sending so much oxygen or whatever into the blood that it helps with pump. And so I'd literally take that and be hyperventilating with the needle still in me
Love
because
it.
I just wanted to feel that pain. And I remember I would fill the sink full of syringes. I would do all this crap because I just didn't care. I hated life. I was unhappy. And I do not like to fail. And I knew I would be willing to do everything. And I was prepared to lose everything. And so when I was done and I saw how bad my health was and reflected on so many conversations and falling outs me and Austin had over the years, it took him pointing out some stuff like, listen, dude, like get your shit together or you will die. My wife saying like, listen, you gotta get your shit together. What really was the reflection is
Yeah.
I asked my father-in-law, hey, can I marry your daughter? He didn't tell me no, but he said, you are beyond basically fucked up and you have a lot to work on. And I knew at that point, if someone won't even give their daughter to me, there needs to be a change. And I just decided coaching people, having my now wife, our cats, future family was more important than anything. And that I just didn't love it. Like training for me, I did it because I loved training, but I loved competing. When wrestling was gone, I had to replace with something. So it went bodybuilding. Bodybuilding went, what is there? There is nothing. But the other thing is when I get into that training mood, those addictive tendencies of wanting to take stuff came back. And so the only way you can stop an addict, and once you're an addict, you're always an addict to everything. And that's how I am with work. I didn't stop the addiction. I just replaced the addiction.
It's a healthier addiction.
It's a healthier addiction, yeah, to a point, yeah, depending on your hours and stuff, is to just get away from it. So I unfollowed bodybuilding. I unfollowed every coach. I got out of it. I stopped training. I had a badass home gym and didn't even use it. I would train clients and that's it. And it was just get out of it because there's nothing rewarding to it. And I saw
There's no competition.
Yeah. It just, I know for a fact every time I would try to prep, I could see those dark thoughts coming. I could see what dug such a hole in my life coming that just didn't make a sense. But now training with Austin, it's fun because I'm like, I don't have to hold myself to a certain standard.
Right.
It's one, we get to connect on a friendship level, but also mentorship, coaches type stuff.
Yeah.
And also I just get to go in there and do it. If I have a shitty day, I have a shitty day. I don't have a show in mind. I never will. And I can just enjoy it and just kind of live. I don't have to be under this microscope or magnifying glass of I have to do blah, 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 blah to be this type of person. That now I can actually have an identity versus chasing an identity.
That was a perfect way to kind of like dovetail that and like, because that's exactly what it is. It's like you're chasing this thing, but you already are a thing. Like you already have an identity. You just can't necessarily conceptualize it. So you try to externalize it into something else. And I mean, I think my saving grace in my own journey is that I love training way more than I love competing. So like even in my situation now, like, you know, torn both quads, I was talking to my coach, Danny, and she's like, I was asking her when she would want to be back involved in the training process because she's a physical therapist as well. Yeah. And she's like, well, it all depends on where you want to get back to. And I was like, I just want to be able to train like a bodybuilder and I want to be able to do some like kettlebell work, metcons and stuff like that whenever I feel like it. And I want to move well. Like that's really all I care about doing. I just want to train hard and be able to push my body. I don't care about competing. Whenever people say, "Oh man, like you're going to come back stronger," like fuck, I don't want to come back stronger. I don't want to squat 800 pounds anymore. But that's because I never identified. Like I don't identify with that anymore. I identify with the process. That's really interesting, man. I think it's going to be important when people listen to this to maybe draw some parallels with their own journeys and realize too, like bodybuilding, powerlifting, these fringe sports, especially when you go the untested route, we're all misfits. We've all got problems.
100%.
We've all got problems. We've all got skeletons in the closet, and some of our skeletons, are physically hurting us. Some of our skeletons, maybe not to that point. Um, but I think I hesitate to say what I was going to say, but like you have to figure out at some point that if you want the other things in your life, like first of all, shout out to your wife, saint.
Yeah.
You keep saying like my current wife was with me back then. I was like, really?
And she went through hell.
Yeah.
Hell.
Yeah. But you got a good one, man.
Yeah.
And
And that was what it was.
yeah,
I was the guy that didn't want a family, didn't want
mhm.
kids, didn't want a
Me
wife.
neither.
I didn't want any of it until I saw it was going to be possibly taken away from me.
Yeah.
I was like, that is way more important to me because bodybuilding eventually is going to go away.
Yep.
And what do you want in life? Like the competition thing was great, but that's because I'm a very competitive person and everything. It could be freaking checkers and I'm going to slit your throat and make sure that there's a definitive winner and loser. There always is a winner and loser in life. And that's what it was. It
Yeah.
wasn't to be great. There's first place, and guess what? Second place isn't any better because guess what? Second place, out of all of the losers, you're the best loser. Third place is better than second place. So that's what it was. It's just I've always lived this life of there's a definitive winner and loser, and I'm like that with everything. Is no matter what it is, there is a winner and loser, and that's why I did it.
Do you find yourself struggling with that sort of mind? Or I'm sure you've broken it by now or in the process of breaking it now. But did you ever struggle with that while coaching non-competitors? Because that's literally the opposite of these people.
It
Like
is.
they don't give a fuck to compete. And they don't give a fuck if they're the best. They just want to be there.
So, man, like with them, I always just try to find what is their victory, what is it, and that is what I use
Okay.
for their wins. Because I don't work with as many bodybuilders like I used to. I still do. I love doing it. It's just whether they want to agree to my terms of not dying in 5 years
Mm-hmm.
and wanting to do what I want to do. That it's definitely something taking time for me to break. Definitely, like I do counseling every week, sometimes twice a week.
Yeah,
At one
fucking right.
point,
Go counseling.
yeah, at one point it was like 4 to 5 times a week when I was at my worst.
Oof, yeah.
So it's like I've never like I'm not afraid to admit having to do all that stuff. So it's definitely a habit I've
No,
had
you
to
should,
break.
man.
But with the lifestyle clients, it's different when you're coaching people because even with like bodybuilders, again, I'm very grateful for all the not dumb things, all of the less than ideal things I've done in life because there's nothing more than I can explain to them. Hey, it's okay if you didn't win. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay. It's not the end of the world. You're still here. You still have something to work towards. There's always other things that with coaching, I never experienced that. And that's why I've always told everyone, whether it's wrestling, bodybuilding, or anything, I was always a better coach than an athlete because I was able to understand the reality. I lived in this imaginary land. If you don't win, you suck. If you get second place, you suck. There's no participation trophies. Oh, if you can't eat your meal, you're just lazy. Everything's more important. With clients, I've always understood the reality. And
Mm-hmm.
I've always been, that's how I always was trying to find that reality. But again, it goes back to that identity issue. I identified myself as a bodybuilder and I always wanted to, I didn't want to be abandoned like I had dealt with when I was younger with stuff. So I was always like, okay, I just want people to want me. I just want to be like appreciated. I just want people, and
Yeah.
it goes back to trauma.
You want that
Um,
external validation.
Yep, 100%. And so with clients, I've never struggled with that because I am always that person that's going to make sure you aren't in that position. If you are in the position I was, then I'm going to make sure I catch you when you're falling before you
Mhm.
get to where I was, that I had to dust myself up. I had to admit my wrongs, because the deeper you fall, the harder it is to climb out, and the more
Yeah.
grueling it is to come out. So with clients, I'm always there to catch them. Like,
Mhm.
hey, I'm noticing this stuff. Like, I helped this men's physique pro. He did the Chicago Pro back in July. He's all in, like, hell yeah, we're going to do this reverse phase. I got 10 pounds to grow into this division, and we're going to keep doing whatever we're going to do. And a couple weeks ago, he talked about, he's like, hey, man, I'm just like burnt out. I'm just tired. I don't have that motion. He's got post-show blues. Everyone
Yeah.
gets it because you're off that high. I'm like, well, what's going on? He's like, just trying to be perfect, trying to be the best. I'm like, that's your problem. You cannot be perfect. All of us will always fail, no matter how hard you try. It's humanly impossible to be perfect. I can promise you, I've been trying my entire life to be perfect.
And you probably put his plan together assuming that he's not going to be perfect.
100%. And I said, well, why don't we do this? Let's adjust things. Stop being perfect. Remember, you're making bodybuilding your life. It's part of your life.
Yep.
You bought a house. You sold a house. You got married during your prep. How about you be a husband and a partner? Bodybuilding's still here, man. It ain't going anywhere.
Yep.
Go have a nice meal. You coach. Okay, well, guess what? You don't need to listen to every fucking podcast out there with every idiotic person that thinks because they have a microphone, they can give an opinion. You don't have to do all that. Find your people that you want to learn from, but you need to find something besides bodybuilding. And I told him, you like video games, play your video games, spend time with your wife. Here we are. Literally, dude, a few days later after that talk, man, my energy is great. Like, he's thinking adrenal insufficiency and all this crap. I'm like, dude, it's not. You're too focused on perfection and stuff right now
Yeah.
that you're stressing yourself out. And guys checking today, man, I feel great. Training's fun. Like, I got back into those hobbies you told me, and I'm just loving life. Like, I just want to let you know I'm having a meal Saturday. And it's like, cool, go for it, dude. What's wrong with that? Like,
That's something that my wife and I talk a lot about because so she just turned pro with Austin and going through the her recovery diet and that, and she's like, could I be a better bodybuilder if I gave up these meals, and like, would I be a better bodybuilder if I treated my off season like prep? And I was like, probably not. And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, you're looking at this through your lens. So let me pull back and kind of I'll talk to you the way that you talk to your clients, because this is the truth. If you eat enough protein and you get in enough calories, and then you train like an animal, which is 100% guaranteed because you train harder than anyone I've ever met. You think you're going to gain more muscle if you have perfect macros added to that? I don't think so.
bingo.
Because that perfect macros is going to be accompanied by stress and a lack of fulfillment, and you're not going to feel as good about our relationship and. But if you check the boxes 80%, 90% of the time, you're going to be fine, and you're going to put on a ton of muscle mass, and you're going to be much happier about it.
Like, this is something I talk to all like potential clients too. Like,
Mhm.
anyone that jumps on the call, I'm like, okay, you've got. I was telling the girl this today. Like you got whatever name A, you got whatever name, and the same person B. You got two versions of you. They're twins. It's
Mhm.
exactly you. It's just two different realities, whatever. The A version of you is willing to do anything I tell you. 100% to the T. You will not make any sacrifices. If it's a wedding night, guess what? You're going to pack your food. Let's say you reach your goal in 2 years. Great. What to do? You reached your whatever goal in 2 years. At that 2 years, what's the rest of your life look like, and what are you looking like?
Mhm.
You're physically whatever goal looking there, but guess what? You're burnt out. So now you just want to stop it, like how I was. I stopped for 4
Yeah.
years. You're burnt out. So guess what? You go back to where you were before. But the kicker here is, during that whole time you're trying to be perfect, you lost touch with your friends and your family. You lost touch with whatever spirituality you had. You lost touch with everything. You lost in touch with your job. So when you end up falling backwards, who's there? No
Yep.
one. People could have died and passed, and you live with regret. And that's what you end up being. You now identify as a person with regret. But let's say you got person B. Person B, instead of being like person A that just takes the interstate, which is faster, but it's also one of the most dangerous roads you could ever take because everybody drives like idiots. Person B is going to take the back roads through the mountains. Got to go slower. Yeah, it's still dangerous, but you're slower paced. It takes a lot longer to get there. But person B isn't going to live 100%, but they're also not going to indirectly or not directly aim for 80%, but they're going to be willing to say yes to things and accept when things aren't perfect. If your partner surprises you and proposes to you, you're going to celebrate with your partner, and you're not going to go train, and you're not going to worry about whatever meal. You're going to enjoy it. If you know your dad or your mother is don't got much longer to live, maybe that week, and let's say that it's literally their last week of life. I hope to God that you go eat like a mofo and enjoy your fucking life with them, because
Yeah.
that's your last week with that person. And it might take you 4 years to get that goal you could have gotten 2 years. But guess what? In 4 years, you now can keep doing that for years to come. You don't live with regret. And you can identify that I'm this person that accomplished the goals, but I didn't lose everything in the process of it. And it goes back to that all in, all out mentality. You
Yeah.
need to be in between. So that's something I always tell everyone. If you can get to that point, you'll get there. It just takes longer.
My rebuttal to that is that I don't think it takes longer.
Bingo.
I think that most people will in fact fail by trying to be too perfect, so they'll never get there. So that person who maybe was a little bit saying yes more than they say no, I think they're more likely to get to their goals and enjoy it along the way and be able to do it forever than the person who tries to be perfect.
Yep.
But I mean, try explaining that to somebody. And this is the beauty of coaching and communication and the way that we kind of sell our services, I guess, is try telling that to somebody who is all in or wants to be all in, that hey, you don't have to be, or all in actually means all in on life and not all in on this one thing.
They'll leave and try 30 other coaches and come back like, hey, you were right.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's get to
So
work.
the one thing that was popping out to me, and we're talking about this like do whatever it takes all in mentality, is something that I've had quite a few conversations with my wife about, because a couple of our clients are in similar situations, and I'm curious to ask someone else, and perfect opportunity. Do you have a line in the sand that you draw with clients, especially when it comes to health being in a certain position, performance goals being in opposition to that health, and the desire of the client to push towards that performance goal, even though they probably would be best served to back off? So, to conceptualize this, clients' blood work isn't awesome. I'm not saying it's shit, but it's not awesome. You think they need another 8 weeks, they want to push right away. Where's your line in the sand?
Depends. Goes back to that debate that I always tell with functional clients. There's a difference between being optimal and being good enough. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think it depends, but I also like to dig what are you willing to sacrifice? If you end up in a worse position, like what are you willing to sacrifice?
Yeah.
And I try to usually I'm more on the side of I would rather us work on health,
Yeah, me too.
but not everyone's going to do that. So
Mhm.
what can I do to indirectly mitigate that? We just
What
go
can we do
safer.
like at the same time?
We just do it safer. And you don't say, "Hey, you're in a health phase," because if you hear you're in a health phase, they're like, "Oh, I'm being a baby. I'm not doing anything."
All right, here's okay. This is a huge gripe. And I literally had this conversation with a client recently. He was like sending me training videos and like training like an absolute pussy. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why aren't you training? He's like, man, I'm in a health phase. I'm just not very motivated. I'm like, do you not think that eating in a caloric surplus and training really hard while on TRT that you will not gain muscle? Just because you're not using a boatload of androgens doesn't mean that your body's anabolic processes don't work.
Right.
If anything, it's more of an excuse to train harder
Right.
so you can be sure as shit that your training is doing something.
Hmm.
But it's like, man, speak on that, because like I feel like as soon as someone hears health phase, they immediately think stagnation.
You know, man, like any of the like bodybuilders, or let's just say whether it's competitors or recreational bodybuilders, because we all have recreational bodybuilders
For
that
sure.
do stuff because they want to look a certain way. That's fine. I'm always going to make sure they're not doing stupid stuff. But at the end of the day, let's take this men's physique pro. I was helping. When he came to me, he had all these GI issues, all these skin issues. He'd been trying for like 6 years to get him fixed. The doctor couldn't get him fixed. And I told him, I said, well, one, you're training 6 days a week. Send me some videos. I was like, right away, you're not training right. Form, execution. I said, you got where you got because of genetics.
You're probably not training hard at all.
No, not to the level of what you or I or Austin or other people would expect or want. I said, we're going to drop you down to HRT, modified version of what I would do for you. But we're going to focus on the nutrition and we're going to focus on the training.
Mm-hmm.
Once you do that, then we'll mess with the PEDs. And what we end up doing for him, it's funny. We maybe got like a 6-week off season, and we only did a 8-week prep to get him ready. He was at his all-time best, and he took a third of the gear he normally takes, and he only trained 4 days a week, and he dieted on 3,700 calories the whole time, and we pulled out cardio 4 weeks out and only did walks outside, and that's it. And he didn't do all the fat burners, took no thyroid or anything. And so with him or anyone, basics are king. Basics. You can improve in a health phase, because the ones I have in a health phase, we're just changing your training around a little bit. We're not training like idiots, but the sole purpose is you should still be progressively overloading in some standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
You're just not going to see as much as what you're thinking. You're not going to see, oh, I gained 20 pounds this cycle because I'm running a bunch of D-ball and taking 100 IU's Atlantis. No, like we're chasing actual.
Sounds like a party.
Right. I used to be, yeah. You're chasing actual progress. And that's that whole health phase. I don't like using these terms.
Yeah.
Because at any point, you should always be in a prep. You should always be in a health phase. Because at no point should we want to intentionally be programming to mess up your health.
I like that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I find if we would all program like that a little bit better, we probably wouldn't get all these stupid freaking terms, all these flushes and all this stupid shit we hear all these idiotic coaches talk about now.
Tell me how you really feel.
Oh God. Or like all the GLP-1 BS. And I'll just stop there. Cause like that stuff I very much don't agree with. You got to save some tools in the toolbox, but we throw all these stupid terms on everything that now everyone, instead of identifying as a competitor, they identify I'm broken. I'm SIBO Sally. I'm not just Sally struggling with GI issues, but that's also stress and going through a divorce and everything else. No, we got to put identity on you. You have X immune issue, or I'll just not try to say certain terms so it doesn't seem like calling out, but you have SIBO or you have adrenal insufficiency. It's like, no, you're struggling a little bit. We can keep working on your goals, but we need to make this a little bit of a priority at the same time.
That's one thing that I find interesting. So I don't know if any of the listeners would know, but so my background's in collegiate strength and conditioning. And when I transitioned out of collegiate strength and conditioning, before I started my online business, I took a job working in disability rehabilitation for an insurance company. So it was my first 9-to-5 job. And it was also my first time ever working with like Gen Pop people. And when I in a week or a month's time, I went from motherfucking kids in a college weight room to trying to convince, Sally with depression that it was okay to go outside. So completely different coaching strategy. But what that taught me a lot of was that many of the most disabled people are not the ones with the lowest function. They're the ones who identify most with their illness. And a beautiful question that someone on the podcast asked me, and it's been on my mind, and I've been asking a lot of my clients, is if you had to tell me who you were, but you could not use your sport, your family, or your job in that description, who are you?
It's a question for me.
That's a fantastic question for all of us to be able to answer. And so when I went through it for myself, I was like, I'm someone who loves doing hard things. I'm someone who actively pursues to be the best version of himself. I'm someone who cares very deeply about those he works with and is surrounded by. So like when you start to frame that, it becomes a lot different, right? Then I'm a coach, I'm a power lifter, I'm a bodybuilder, I'm a husband, I'm a father, whatever it might be. And I think it gives you a lot more clarity. When we attach these names or these labels to people, that becomes part of their identity, and it's almost impossible to shake over time. It's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, because especially with something like SIBO, it's like it's probably going to come back. So it's an easy thing that you can identify with and never let go.
And they don't know if anything pops up that's similar. Is it, oh no, I have SIBO again. No, you just didn't happen to be stressed and have a little bit of reflux.
Oh no, I farted.
Yeah. So I obviously I do more functional more than anything. Now.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I get. The joke at our seminar we did was me, Aaron, Crawford, Matt, and Austin, and Adam Casey. The joke by a lot of the guys there that know who I am and know some of the clients I help, and Matt always says it. The joke always was like, someone would ask a question, what do you do with this client? And the joke was always, you send them to Trey. because I get all jacked up people that they've been through 30 coaches, and now I've got to pull the fucking pieces together and explain to you, you actually don't have that. They just want to fearmonger you into
Right.
believing you had that. That I don't like to ever put anything on there, because as soon as I identify as that, when you don't have that anymore, you don't know what to do.
Right.
You don't. You
Yep.
couldn't just be Jimmy with stress, which then correlates into bloat, which then correlates into you don't feel the best, which then correlates with like constipation or loose stools. Like you couldn't just identify it as like as you in general. Why do you need that health thing? So like with a lot of my clients, I always have to do a lot of unpacking, and I'm like, well, sorry to break it to you, just because you had a streptococcus overgrowth on your GI map doesn't mean you have SIBO. GI map doesn't diagnose SIBO in the first place.
Right.
You know, it's humanly impossible. Just because your antibodies on your thyroid was a 20 and not below a 10, you don't have Hashimoto's. Just because you can't lose weight doesn't mean you have OID and you need semaglutide and 90-hour fasting and whatever else to trigger autophagy. That's not it.
Dude, autophagy might be my least favorite word in the health and fitness space. Autophagy is one. The insulin and weight loss fallacy is another one. Like the fact that fasting is the answer to all of life's problems. Bro, you know what also does everything that fasting does? A caloric deficit.
Are you sure you have weight loss resistance, or are you just someone that needs to do way more than other people?
Yeah. Are you just butt chucking M&Ms every night?
Right. You know what I mean? Like, so that's always been, it irks the crap out of me. Like, and it always sounds negative, but like the way I just try to program, it's just like, we should always be working on your health. Like,
Yep.
that just doesn't make any sense. Why would I? And that doesn't mean you take 30 supplements because we're being preventative, or you got to take telmisartan to prevent heart remodelization or whatever crap terms people want to say. Let's get your labs. Okay, we see you always struggle with this. You tend to always be an XYZ issue. Then we need to probably support that and pay attention to that.
Right.
You don't need to take 30 different meds or supplements to prevent that, because you're not doing anything anyways. At the end of the day, your body's going to decide what it wants to do, no matter how hard you try to control it. But what we can do is mitigate things by proper programming, doing different phases, and not being afraid to be in a maintenance or a deficit. Be willing to take less PEDs at times. Again, most of my guys spend more time off than on and at cruise, like majority of the year. Like it's okay to do that stuff. The reason why it's not okay in our industry is we are afraid to go outside the box. And that's kind of something like Austin and me and other people always got is like, well, wait, like I'm on insulin and you have me on fats. I'm gonna get fat. Like, what the hell? Like, no, that's different than what they preach. Or, well, hold on. Like, my blood pressure is 100/50, but they said I need my telmisartan. And it's like, well, think about that logically for a freaking second. Do you really need that? Like, just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong.
The number of people who have steered away from these ancillary drugs. It's like, man, like they told me I have to take a Arimidex with my TRT. I'm like, if you have to take a Arimidex with your TRT, we got a bigger problem
Right.
than just that. If 125 milligrams of testosterone means that you need a Arimidex, let's try to think of other reasons why that might be the case. And I mean, fuck, if you have high estrogen on TRT, it's probably not a fact that you're aromatizing too much. It's probably that you're not metabolizing the estrogen properly and excreting it. So let's address that first.
Yeah,
But
the
anyway,
coaches are just drug dealers. Or supplement dealers. They don't want to learn on how to correct the issue. Let's just give you something so we can keep pushing on that goal, because that's what you hired me for. You hired me for a goal. You didn't hire me to actually better you and get to that goal safely, and so you can keep doing what you want to do. It's like, no, I need your money. I need the before and after, so I can trick some other monkey to come work with me, and so that I'm this big famous person and big coach, and I know all. That gripes the shit out of me with this industry sometimes, because that's how it is. It truly is.
I love that I got you fired up. So I'm going to keep it going. You said GLPs and they got immediately angry. Tell me why you hate GLPs.
Like, I don't want to say there's not merit to it, but truly, in reality, like, how many people actually need it? Like, it's also not something. It's only being talked about now, but they came out, like semaglutide came out in 2017.
Right.
Why is it being talked around now? Because these coaches don't want to learn anything else, and they want to give something shiny. Oh, you couldn't lose weight. Oh, you couldn't use this. Well, guess what? I own an HRT clinic. You can work with me as a coach, and you can take this at the same time. It's money. And that's what pisses me off is a lot of the people that are promoting this, they're also associated with someone that they're getting a kickback to. It's a very money hungry industry. And that's what's always irked me a lot of times is it's all about money. And I really don't think it's something you have to always resort to. That is the type of stuff we should be saving as an absolute last resort.
Yeah, tool in the toolbox, only to be like break glass if.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be like nuclear bombs coming at you. We got to press that big fucking red button and this is what we got to do. But how many of those people actually have every single aspect in place? And we're always thinking supplements and GI mapping and Dutch tests and everything. Well, let's unpack this further. Are they actually here mentally? Have they actually fixed the trauma that's actually causing them to be constantly stressed in the first place? Most of the time not, because everyone thinks, oh, I'm just going to journal and be okay. Or I'm just going to take this and be okay. And that's my issue is I truly don't think we've worked on every single thing before getting to that point, because then we also don't educate these people on how to stop taking it. And again, it's just a Band-Aid. And again, they can identify as I have weight resistance. I need this. But instead, there's most likely other things going on. Like you can't tell me if you struggled with childhood abuse and rape and all this stuff, that is not going to prevent you from getting to your goal, because you might see things all the time that are triggers. Trigger. That probably would prevent you from reaching your goals and having reoccurring issues. Well, instead of semaglutide or whatever XYZ med or supplement,
go to therapy.
Go to therapy. Maybe do EMDR. Maybe some need mushroom therapy. Some do ketamine therapy. Some do like DMT type stuff. Everyone's different. Why wouldn't you go down that route and actually unpack that stuff that you've been storing forever in Pandora's box and you don't want to unpack because you are fearful and you identify as this? Again, it goes back to identity. That's my biggest issue with it. I think we rush to it before it's an absolute necessity.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you in a lot of instances, and I love playing devil's advocate. It's my favorite thing in the world. I look at these drugs in a very similar light that I look at SSRIs and anti-anxiety medication, because especially when working in the disability population, we got a lot of continuing education, and the research is very clear with regards to SSRIs is they barely work unless the person does therapy. Yeah. And then when you combine the SSRI with the therapy, that's when you get the breakthroughs. Yep. So I always looked at SSRIs and therapy as SSRIs being that brake pedal that allows people to slow down so that they can benefit from the therapy. I've kind of applied that same framework whenever working with clients, and I'll be straight up. I've never actually said, client, you need this, or you should take this. I don't think it's my place. I think it's a bit outside my scope, but I have had clients who have been recommended these drugs from their care providers. And I've taken it as an opportunity to be like, okay, this is the situation. This drug works by decreasing your appetite. With a decreased appetite, let's practice saying no. Let's practice, that totally threw me off. Let's practice journaling about our food choices. Let's practice tracking our macros. Let's practice all of these skills and strategies that you couldn't do before because you were so hungry. And let's use this as the brake pedal in a similar parallel. I do think people go to it too quickly.
Yeah.
And I have advised a few clients not to go down that route. But I've also had a number of clients that have had tremendous results and have been able to either taper up their dosage, figure out their shit, and start tapering down. And I have had some clients who just start on it and they feel fantastic. They've been making progress and they're good to go.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. Like a lot of times when people talk to me, they're like, "Oh, you're just anti-Western medicine." It's like, no, Western medicine has its place.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not going to disagree. I might not like SSRIs or antidepressants or any med. That's just me. I don't prefer them until they're needed. All of these things I view as needed, but I'm also not going to disagree for some. If we use like the HRT argument with some females that want to rush to that versus fix their stuff, quality of life comes into play. And those are the times where I'm like, well, here's what I can provide you. This is the evidence. This is the pros and the cons. This is what I think we need to have in place first. And I'll provide it. I'm like, what I want you to do is I want you to write a pros and cons right now. Tell me, like, what are the pros of this? What are the cons? After going through everything I give you, what do you think we should do? Because at the end of the day, they're going to do it whether you want them to or not. They make the final thing. All we can do is give advice. They're going to make the decision. So I try to say, well, what do you think we should do? And I'll be like, cool. I have some that have used it, and we've gotten them off of it after they figured out, oh, I didn't have the habits in place in the first place. And I was willing to give it a shot, and that's all you kind of can do. Is kind of, you got to give. With coaching, it's not a dictatorship. We're all on an evil level playing field in anything in life. There's no hierarchy in this life. I don't care how rich you are or how powerful you are. We are all fucking same when you strip us to basic biology, and it needs to be treated that way. It's the same thing with these arguments. Is as much as I don't agree with it, it's just not something I'm going to reach for, because I feel, at least in my experience, it's being thrown around too much, too quick. And I think it also goes back to the certain influencers and stuff like that are promoting this. They're promoting it as, here's your fix. And that is my whole issue with it, is we're just promoting, you just need to do this. It's like with the gut. I do more stuff with the gut than anything. If you kill the bacteria, you're going to be better. And then we're always thinking kill, 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 keep kill. That's my same issue with that whole philosophy, is we're thinking this is the only way you have to do it. If you don't do this, you will not be better. I challenge you that there's another way, and that you actually need to understand this stuff. Clients should understand everything, and we should stop. It's being used too much as a money grab, as a fix, when I think there's other things that can be worked on. But the same token, I'm not going to disagree if you have a 600-pound person that their first meal is a 2-liter of Mountain Dew and 5 Big Macs. I'm not going to disagree in that case that, listen, they can't even get up to go to the bathroom. They can't even roll over. They can't even pick up their food. They have a feeding tube all the way up to them. I'm not going to disagree that that is a case medically where that could be used to our benefit. That's my whole gripe, is the fitness industry has grabbed onto something that's been around for a while. GLPs have been around for freaking years, but we're using it to hurt people. And if you notice the industries and fitness coaching and bodybuilding, everything, notice where the trend keeps going, and we always keep grabbing onto it. It's not new shit. It's just now being talked about. At one point, it's like, okay, you need as much drugs as possible to build bodybuilding. And it's like, oh, no, we don't want everybody to die. We don't want everybody to die at 25. So we need to do safer use. Then it's like, oh, you got to do this. Now it's like everyone has this functional issue. You need to do this. And it's like, no, you're just pivoting to what money is doing. And you're realizing all the fuck ups we're doing in the process.
And I'm glad that you highlighted that, because I think it's important to draw the parallel between whether we're talking about a GLP-1 agonist or whether we're talking about, a client who wants to go on a PED cycle. There is pros and cons to every decision that you make. And as a coach, it's our responsibility to educate. And through that education, we empower the best decision-making process on the part of the client. And ultimately, they're going to do what they're going to do. And it's up to us to guide them in the direction that best serves them. And I think I come back to my previous question to you before of like, where's your line in the sand? I think your line in the sand as a coach needs to be when their decision compromises your ethics.
Bingo.
And when their decision directly leads to some risk factors that you're not comfortable having your name beside.
Like I had a girl, had all these GI issues. We worked together for like 6 months or so. And I refuse to prep females. I'm not in that anymore. My females always send photos in sports bra and shorts. I don't want to see anything. Cool. If your other coach wants to see every bit of skin, I don't care. That's a privacy of your partner and yourself. And that's also respect to my wife as well, that I'm not going to do that. And we were at the ends of the road here where it's like, we got you better. And she was bringing up competing again. And she brought up, and I just told her, like, listen, I'm not going to prep you. I can't. I'm sorry. I am not willing to put you in the same scenario that created these issues in the first place. I can't commit to that. I also can't break my ethics of where I told myself I will never prep females from the second I've been with my now wife. That is exactly how it is I'm going to be there and I'm going to tell you, like, listen, these are the pros and cons. Let's try it. Let's see how it goes. But the second I see our bodies giving your body or your feedback or anything's giving us negative feedback, you got to promise me that you're going to be willing to pull back or stop. Otherwise, I can no longer help you because I'm not willing to let something happen to you and impact me, which then impacts Austin, which then impacts a lot of people. I'm not willing to do that. I don't care how much money you're paying me. That is not something I'm willing to do, because at the end of the day, when I die, the money and stuff doesn't go with me. It doesn't. I can make more money if I really need money. I can go flip burgers if I really need your money. It's not the
You do OnlyFans. I'm sure you're a very handsome man.
right. I could sell like farts in jars. I'm sure there's some freak out there that would want that. Like, you know what I mean? And so that's very much how it is. Like, I'm obviously gonna sit on the edge of like, I want you to be healthy, but I also have to be realistic. You have these goals. And if I don't help you try to be healthy and get those goals, you're gonna go up to the next coach that is gonna give no shits, that all they're after is results and a payment. So that I will keep chiming in and keep being there until it's at the absolute breaking point. It's like, we are now ultimatum. We either do this or I can't help you. Yep. And I'm here if you ever need anything. That's where I kind of draw my line with everything.
Yeah. I've been in a few situations like that myself. And I think as you get older and as you develop a lot more experience, you get more comfortable making that decision to step away. I think that's a perfect way to kind of end the serious part of our conversation. I mean, I mentioned before we got on that like I didn't know where the conversation was going to go, and it went in a really, really positive direction, because these are subjects that we haven't really chatted about on the podcast before.
Awesome.
And there are things that all of us coaches need to have in mind, because ultimately it's our privilege and responsibility to help people be the best versions of themselves. And if we're engaging in practices that moves them further away from that in pursuit of some goal for external validation, we're doing themselves and our position a disservice. And I'm really glad that you highlighted that fantastically. So I do like to finish the podcast with like some silly questions.
Yeah.
So the first one, do you crack an egg on a flat surface or the side of or the corner of the pan?
Dude, I couldn't tell you last time I've had eggs, but if I was going to cook my wife's eggs, it's on the side of the pan.
One album that you could listen to with no skips.
I'll tell you. It's Post Malone's album in 2017, I think. Let's see. I'll tell you the exact one.
Fuck, he's been around for that long.
Yeah, man. Like, that was one of the albums that got me through from not killing myself after my wreck. Beer Bongs and Bentleys. It's from 2018.
Beer Bongs and Bentleys.
It's important because one of the very first dates with my now wife was to his concert.
Oh, that's
always
pretty cool.
Sticks with me. And it's an album that I was going through a lot of rough stuff and a lot of abandonment and stuff before her. That's just a banger. But anything Post Malone, hell, even his new one is, if you like country music.
No, it's good.
It's good. So yeah, that one.
Who's your Mount Rushmore of coaches?
So Austin, dude, he's like a brother. That's the best man at my wedding. That's my guy. So Austin will
He's
be
the man.
I
I joke that Austin's the only dude I'm okay with my wife sending pictures in a bikini to.
Well, that's the only one that I would let my wife work with at the same time. I would say Austin. This guy's kind of unknown. Well, I wouldn't say unknown in the U.S., but Dave O'Brien. So he worked with Charles Poliquin, James Laval, Brian Walsh.
The name rings. Is he Canadian?
No, he's Australian. Lives in Montenegro now.
I'm gonna look him up.
He's like the godfather when it comes to gut and labs. I do an hour and a half phone call with him every week. I've been mentoring with him since like 2021 or 2020. Is there 5 people on Mount Rushmore?
You're the American, dude. There's 4.
4? Oh, good question. That's hilarious. I would say, man, all these people are not going to be like super famous.
It doesn't matter.
So this guy gets a lot of gripe, and I don't care. He's a really good friend of mine. I can just say from a business perspective and talking to clients and reflecting, he's played, besides Austin, he's played the biggest impact, but Jeff Sue. I know a lot of people don't like him. I know he can be pretty brash.
He's pretty brash, yeah.
But if you talk to him on a personal level, I can tell you, dude, one of the nicest human beings ever. And I can say, like, I still mentor with him, like, on the business side. He's been a game changer. And I can tell you last year when I was worried we were going to get divorced, that is the guy that saved me. He's the one that called me out on my shit. It's
pretty powerful, man.
And from a personal standpoint, and again, he thinks outside the box with some things. And so I would say him. And then 4th, I mean, he's probably on most people's if you're in bodybuilding, but John Meadows. And dude, I've done every program of his. Like when I worked with Chris, that's the program I always did. And John, like I live in Columbus, right outside of Columbus, Ohio. Any interaction I ever had with him, like when I would work with Project AD and we were at a supplement store, we'd present next to each other or table. John was always just so freaking genuine to me. He just was. And if I had to add a fifth one real quick, even though we don't really talk that much, I really got to put Chris on there. We probably should catch up sometime. We just haven't. Just because if it wasn't for him, I would not have gotten into coaching and I wouldn't have gotten into bodybuilding. I wouldn't have gotten into anything. I would have probably be running my dad's business in Virginia, which means I wouldn't have met my wife or met Austin. And that I always have to say, like, he always has to be on there, even though life is different and we might not always agree with the same thing. A lot of the things that I learned with a lot of stuff, he's the one to owe. And I could always be grateful for, I mean, hell, the name of the personal training side of my company is based off of something he told me, that if I had to have a fifth, he's got to be on there because it is all to him. He's one of the few I always got to owe things to.
I love that, man. Thank you so much for sharing that. The last question, this is where I get you to do my job for me, is if there's one person that you would like to see me interview on the podcast, who would it be? But the caveat is that you have to help me get them on.
You know, man, Dave, you've had Austin on, you've had Berzicott on. I mean, like, I could get other people, but the reason why I say Dave is I'm telling you, dude, the shit that he has taught me and he still teaches me, it blows my freaking mind. And how I coach from the gut health and functional side, that is who I've learned everything. Him or Jake Dollishaw. Jake is another one I put on Mount Rushmore. That's who Dave mentors as well. Dave is
the intro, man. Yeah, I'll do it.
I can connect you with him and see if he would, but I can tell you the stuff that he has taught me, it blows my freaking mind. And every time I get on the call, he's hard to understand because his Australian accent is pretty strong.
I love that.
But and talking to him so long, there's a lot of things I say Australian, like instead of I'm about to say oregano, I say oregano, or instead of like kefir, goat kefir, I say kefir because that's how he's always told me about it. And so, but I just tell you, dude, he will blow your freaking mind. And him being connected to like Charles when he was around, and James Laval with the peptide side of things and blood work as well, and like Brian Walsh, who, like, if you ever got him on there, like, it's king of the whiteboard. But Dave, the reason why I think it's important is right now in the US, I'm the main guy that talks about a lot of the stuff he talks about that no one knows who the fuck he is. And that is someone that needs to be here in the US teaching some of the stuff. Is it all like aligned with everything we say? No, but it's a different way to think, especially if we're thinking about the gut, because he is more gut based than anything. And that's who really changed my philosophy, that healing doesn't always mean killing. If you line the gut lining and you line up the process, you will heal. There's other stuff in there. There's the internal defense mechanisms. There's things the body does to correct itself. And that's why people in the 1800s weren't living off of antimicrobials. Their body had the self-protective mechanisms to keep you healthy. And Dave, he carries that damn torch, man, that I'll definitely ask him, but that's the guy, like, he blows your mind. And here in the US, they'll probably be like, I don't know what the hell this guy's talking about. He's very heavy evidence-based, which that means animal and rat stories, but that's not an issue. And he might talk over a lot of people's heads. But if you can dumb it down, which I know he can to a point.
I'm pretty good at dumbing it down. So I could be dude, like the go-between, like translator for him.
Yeah, like he is good. Like I talked to him on Tuesday and I'll message him too. He's fucking good, man. Like really is. Most of the coaches or colleagues I have, they didn't know who he was until I was like talking about him. Like a lot of people just aren't aware of who it is.
I've definitely heard his name before, but I think it's because of his association with Charles. Because I've been following Charles for 20 years. So
yeah, another one that'd be good. I don't know if I get him. Luke Lehman, if you know who Luke is.
I do know Luke. Yeah,
that's a good one. He thinks outside the box.
Dude, I really appreciate it. If there's one parting word of wisdom you had for the audience, what would it be?
Don't think in absolutes and be willing to think outside the box. with everything. Promise
I
you.
love it. I'll have links to where everyone can find you in the show notes.
Cool.
So thank you very much for joining, everyone. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and we'll catch you on the next one.